This episode of the Deep Thinkers podcast is brought to you by Bright Island Outreach. Bright Island Outreach is a group of dental professionals that take several trips a year down to the Dominican Republic. There they are networked with local dental colleges, and together they take mobile dental units and go into the impoverished communities. And once they're there, they do education, hygiene, extractions, fillings, root canals, and cosmetics. They take the time to create relationships with these people, and they come back multiple times a year to ensure that they are getting the adequate dental care they need. If you're looking to go on an adventure, you can go with them, or if you'd like to support them in other ways, that would be excellent also. You can find them at www.brightislandoutreach.org. 100% of the proceeds collected goes to the cause. This episode of the Deep Thinkers podcast is brought to you by Crandall Pest Control. Crandall Pest Control is a family-owned business that was founded in 2002. They do general pest control, rodents and weed control, but specialize in termites and scorpions. When you call them, mention the Deep Thinkers podcast and get $30 off your first general pest and scorpion treatment. One order of housekeeping before we dive into this podcast. The episode recorded directly before this one, Kevin Lee helped me dial in my equipment just a little bit more so it sounds better, and I'm able to get a little more function out of what I have. That being the case, he set things up to record a little differently than I had been doing it in the past. And this resulted in me not getting it quite right on this first trial run. So for about the first 35 minutes of the podcast, the audio is a bit skewed. You can hear Josh great, but my mic isn't working. I happened to look over and notice that the monitor didn't look the same as when Kevin and I were recording our podcast, and I stopped to investigate the situation. I've done my best to edit it and make it usable, but if you can't stand it, then move forward to about 35 minutes and the audio will be great. Please accept my apologies for this and try to bear through it the best you can. Thank you. Hello, Planet Earth. I am here today with Josh Hoyle. Josh is a skydiver. What is your official title, Josh?
I am a senior parachute rigger.
Senior parachute rigger.
Yep.
That sounds pretty cool.
I just play with parachutes all day.
I mean, it's not quite as cool a title as, like, Best Boy Grip. But, like, senior parachute rigger is pretty awesome. So, walk me through, like, what you do.
I play a supporting role in the operations of everyday skydiving. I pack parachutes, make them go from big things into little things. I don't know. It's hard to really, describe, I guess.
How long have you been doing skydiving?
I made my first skydive in 2011.
2011, and it was just...
I went with my best friend. He was like, hey, I've got 12 people that are going to get together and I'll go make a skydive together. And I showed up, and I was the only one besides him that showed up.
Nice.
So, yeah. So he and I went and made a skydive together. We then went and made another tandem the following week, and I fell in love with it. The only issue was I didn't have the funds at the time because I was only making minimum wage. And had a massive overhead as well to try and take care of, so it was just not feasible at the time.
Right.
And then fast forward to 2013, the opportunities did present themselves, and that was when I jumped feet first into the whole thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
How many jumps do you do a day usually?
On average, I'll make one or two. But if I'm team training, the most I've ever done in a day was 8.
Jeez.
Yeah, I made 15 in a weekend over the course of 2 days. I did 7 on a Saturday and 8 on a Sunday.
And the rest of the time you're packing shoots?
Yeah. When I did that, I was filming a 4-way team that was actually working on competing.
Right on.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, I work at Skydive Arizona in Eloy. It is pretty much one of the biggest drop zones in the world. We put up hundreds of skydives in a day on average. Yeah, It's one of the biggest drop zones in the world. It's a huge crossroad that you could say. It's like a mecca, and I've seen people from all over the world that have come out here to train and jump for fun and come visit and party and all kinds of stuff.
Wow, so people have come to Arizona from all over the world just to hit this spot.
Oh yeah. We have about 300 jumpable days a year.
Yeah.
So it's almost always sunny.
And then monsoon season.
Aside from monsoon season or like during the summer, it'll get kind of terrible in the winds will get
You can say shit.
okay. It'll get kind of shitty and the winds will get kind of shitty in the day, like in the afternoon, because you'll get dust devils and stuff, and it's not good to fly parachutes in those.
I imagine so.
But other than that, like, you can jump first thing in the morning and jump all until about noon, 1 o'clock, and you can still get like the teams that I pack parachutes for when they're doing training. They'll do 6 to 8 jumps right in a row where they'll go up on the plane, go into free fall, land, and then run in, get another parachute that's already packed, get on the plane that had just landed that they just jumped out of, and then go right back up. Yeah, and so then they'll do like 12 to 14 jumps in a day, and I'm packing for 2 of those guys, so I'm doing 20 to 30 parachutes and packing 20 to 30 parachutes in a day.
So how many parachutes have you packed
In one day?
in your career?
In my career, right now, I think I'm at a little over 20,000. Yeah.
Sheesh. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
Okay. So let's keep the math simple though. So for this next question, if we're doing 10 jumps a day, 5 days a week, how much of that time over the course of like, say a week, a month, whatever, we don't have to get too crazy with the math, but how much of that time is actually spent in free fall and how much is spent climbing to the jumpable altitude?
Well, it's about a minute of free fall per skydive. So if you're making 10 jumps a day, it's 10 minutes of free fall.
Okay.
But then you're spending it so the time it takes to get to altitude from takeoff is dependent on the amount of fuel in the aircraft that's flying, and how many people are in it. Because the lighter the plane, the faster it's going to climb. I've been in a plane, in a Twin Otter that is built to hold like 20 plus guys, and there was 6 or 7 of us in there, and
Zips you right up.
it was insane how fast we were climbing. Like, I was almost sliding down the bench as we were climbing all the way up to altitude. Like, it was so nice. And then I had the whole plane to myself, so I was just like laying down on the bench. It was awesome. Yeah.
Have you been in some pretty tight planes going up?
Oh yeah, I've jumped out of planes that only held 3 or 4 people, and then I've jumped out of planes that held 44 people. So,
All types.
yeah.
And does Skydive Arizona own all these planes, or they contract people to have their own planes out to bring them in? Or?
So Skydive Arizona, I believe we've got 5 Twin Otters, which is like a very utilitarian plane. It's one of the most popular twin turbine aircraft for skydiving. And then we also have, I think, 5 or 6, something like that, Skyvans, which is another like very utilitarian airplane, but that has an actual tailgate. So instead of exiting the side of the fuselage,
Right.
you're actually jumping straight out of the back of the plane, like
Nice.
you're just walking off a platform.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. People will like jump with inflatable rafts and stuff out of the back of them, and like there'll be like 3 people in the raft and then like 6 other people hanging onto it as it's flying out of the airplane.
That's tight.
Yeah, it's so much fun.
That's tight.
Yeah.
I think going out the back like that would be mentally a little easier.
It's
Rather than like crouching out the side and being like, okay, here I go.
It depends. Like, I don't know. My opinion of it is very different than somebody that would be a first-time jumper.
Right,
Like,
that's
'cause,
me.
yeah.
From the first time jumper's point of view, I think that would be maybe a little more psychologically. Just keep walking.
Well, yeah, 'cause then,
Fall.
yeah, with the Skyvan, that's what the instructors tell you to do, is they're just like, yeah, so we're We're just gonna walk off the end. That's all we're gonna do. Yep. Once you walk off, just remember to keep your hands on your harness, and you'll be okay.
Sure, that's kind of the point.
Just don't do it too soon and smash your face on the ground.
Ooh, yeah, because then it's gonna be a rough ride down.
Yeah.
No, I haven't gone skydiving yet. I almost went when I graduated from high school, but I was going on my mission, and my parents were like, my uncle was all about it. He had gone skydiving. He was kind of lobbying for me to go. And my parents did not want me damaged in any way before I went to England. So it was 86, and I've just never taken the opportunity to do it since. But it's definitely on the bucket list, which I bet you hear a lot of. Oh, it's on my bucket list.
Yeah. Everybody says, oh, it's on my bucket list.
Yeah, that's my Tuesday.
What better time to come out and do it than now?
True.
Like,
YOLO.
why not?
So, now we were talking about some of the guys you pack for earlier, before we sat down, and you mentioned that you threw out some pretty impressive numbers about how many times these guys have jumped. Now, what are some guys that you pack for, and how many jumps do these guys have beneath their belts?
Well, one of the guys that I packed for, his name's Thomas Hughes. He was on airspeed for years. He's got well over 20,000 skydives.
Sheesh.
He's a world champion skydiver in a certain discipline of skydiving, and he's one of the most all-around humble guys I've ever met. Super cool dude, but badass flyer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Oh yeah.
Very
He's
cool.
got, to the best of my knowledge, 25-ish thousand jumps. Another guy that I've worked with, I haven't really packed his parachute, but I've worked at several drop zones around him while he was doing a lot of coaching and jumping and stuff. And yeah, he's got well over 30,000 skydives, and he's only in his late 30s. So, yeah. But this is a guy that he grew up in a drop zone, and his dad was a tandem instructor and skydiver and stuff, so he was introduced to it in diapers. So by the time he was 18, he had already been around skydiving for decades. So once he started jumping, he pretty much just went full tilt and hasn't stopped since then.
18 so he could jump.
No, if you want to see some really cool videos, you want to look up TJ Langren, like XRW and stuff like that. He does some really neat stuff where he's mixing disciplines of skydiving that used to not really go together. 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, the thought of flying a parachute next to a wingsuit and actually maintaining the same relative flight characteristics was unheard of. It was thought of impossible, nearly.
Yeah, I think those wingsuit guys are absolutely insane. I mean, they're equally badass, but totally insane. I would be a spot on that mountain.
Yeah, so the thing about that is that's a whole different other sport. That's base jumping, where you're proximity flying. The injury and death rate in that is very, very different than what you would be exposed to even in wingsuiting and skydiving.
Right.
Because out of, I want to say it was 1.5 million jumps that were made in 2015 or 2016. We only had 22 to 25 deaths in the sport.
Worldwide.
Countrywide. Yeah, in the whole USPA, which is the United States Sport Parachute Association.
Imagine in countries where the rules aren't quite as...
Yeah, it's regulated a little differently in other places.
It's a little scary in some...
Sometimes, yeah. But that's not to say that not all countries' ways of doing of their programs are unsafe.
Right,
Just different.
Yeah.
So the injury rates that happen are generally going to be from guys that are single, that are in the same age bracket and statistic wise as the guys that kill themselves on motorcycles.
Wow.
So they're going to be like 28 to 36 single males that have nothing better to do than go do stupid shit. Yeah. So they'll go, just like with guys on motorcycles, they'll go faster than they think they can, than they should be, you thinking their skills are better than they are, and they'll push the limits, and just like with motorcycles, the repercussions are not forgiving.
Right.
Not at all.
Yeah, I would love to own a motorcycle, but I know myself. I would have to have a Harley, because if I could just sit back and enjoy the ride, that's okay. But those bullet bikes, man, I know what they're capable of.
Yeah.
And they're capable of some amazing shit, and I would push the envelope on it. I know I would.
Well, I owned a GSX-R 750, and probably one of the smartest decisions I ever made was to sell it and use that money to start skydiving.
There you go,
Because
man.
there are no cops in the sky. I can go as fast as I want.
Yeah.
I've done over 190 miles an hour without the aid of any kind of engines or anything, just with my own body using gravity. Yeah, and it's so much fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Are there a lot of skydivers that ride motorcycles? Is that a common thread?
Kind of. Yeah. It's not uncommon. No. I mean, I still, even though I don't have any sport bikes or street bikes anymore, I still have a couple dirt bikes that I'll ride around if I get a wild hair or something.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
And
it's
everybody should hop on a dirt bike a couple times in their life.
Yeah.
You know, even if you're not jumping or doing anything crazy, just go pedal around. They're fun, man.
Well, fortunately, like, I only live a mile away from Skydive, Arizona, and where my house is at, I can actually ride my dirt bike to work, and I don't even cross any roads. I just go through the desert and farm fields and stuff.
You know, this desolation. Imagine
Yeah.
you ride your dirt bike to work.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
awesome, dude.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it.
When people come into town and they're like, okay, yeah, Phoenix, all right, cool, I'm here, you know, like I'm gonna go do some skydiving. Yeah. They hop on the freeway and they get to the tent.
Yeah, and then they get out to Eloy, and they're like, "What is this shit? Where did I go?
Didn't they film Star Wars here? I think they filmed Star Wars.
What did I get myself into?"
Eloy is not an impressive part of
No,
Arizona.
there's really nothing out there.
Yeah.
Like, we don't even have a street light in the town of Eloy.
Yeah.
But
That's Eloy's. I used to work for a restoration company, and we did a pack out in Arizona City.
okay.
Yeah, and which is like right next door to Eloy.
Yeah, it's about 10-15 minutes away.
Is it really
Yeah.
that far?
Yeah, it's about 10 minutes away.
So I had to go out there a lot. Every time I go out there, I'd be like, okay, where is the turn? Okay, there it is. You know, it just desolation, man. If Skydive Arizona wasn't out there,
There would be nothing out
there
there.
would be no Eloy.
Yeah.
So we have Skydive Arizona to thank for the blessing that Eloy is in our fine state.
The only other thing that, like, not the only other thing, but the big thing that Eloy's population, aside from skydiving, has is farmers, because it's mostly farmland out there.
There you go. Yeah.
So anything that's not desert is going to be farmland for, like, either cotton or wheat or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Sorghum.
Oh, yeah.
Lots of sorghum.
Yeah.
Arizona loves it.
Dude, we've got skydivers that are actually crop dusters and stuff out there and fly out there, and
Yeah.
that's actually something that I've been looking into, because packing parachutes is extremely hard work. It's probably some of the hardest work I've ever done.
Yeah.
And working for myself, I end up working multiple days in a row where I find myself having a hard time justifying taking days off.
Yeah.
And then it ends up beating me up in the long run, and which is terrible for me. But so what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to use those avenues and the people that I meet and have met and start pursuing aviation as a long-term kind of profession. So I want to start flying planes for a living.
Yeah, it's all about who you know, man. If you're a good person and a hard worker,
It really is.
people will vouch for you, and if you don't disappoint, then
Oh yeah.
they can take you.
So Arizona Airspeed is one of the top-ranked four-way belly teams in the world. They compete at a world level.
What's four-way bell?
So it is. So there's four people that are in formation together, and you have to build a certain series of points, which is how each other are oriented in a specific series of grips and formations. And in competition, the night before the jumps, that you get the series of jumps or the series of points that you have to perform on each jump. So you don't get any time to practice it. You have to just go straight into the jumping the next morning and start competing. And then it's a cumulative score overall of the day's worth of jumping. Whoever got the most points wins.
So you have to be sharp on
So
all
you've
of
got
your
to be
skills.
on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then so how you score the points or how you figure out where the points come from is there's a fifth guy called the camera guy, and he actually exits with the team at the same time, and he films their points from up above. And his job is to make sure that he has them in frame and you can see all the grips so that you get the point and stuff like that. Like he's just as much of a team player as everybody else.
Yeah, you're only as good as your camera.
Yeah, well, you're only as good as the weakest link, really.
Right, yeah.
And so and the thing about this team is they believe that character is harder to find than skills, especially in skydiving. They would much rather have somebody that fits with the team that isn't necessarily as skilled but has the potential than somebody that is kind of a douche and doesn't really fit well with the team but has the skills.
Yeah, I got
They would much rather take the time to train the other guy, the first guy, because he's going to be much more of a much better fit for the team, and then they have that much better of a potential to progress as a group. And so they would rather invest, and it's an interesting style of team building, and I like it.
Other than four belly, what else do they do that's without like a bodysuit that's just parachute stuff? Like, what are the different?
Oh man,
parachuting?
so you have four-way FS, which is formation skydiving, which is just belly to earth. That's your typical, that's how you fall in any normal orientation. Like when you're going through school to learn how to skydive or when you're doing a tandem, you're always falling belly to earth. That's the most stable, slowest position to fall in. It's also the position you deploy your parachute in every time, ideally. And so you have that, but then you have four-way, 8-way, 10-way, and 16-way. In each of those, there's a series of formations that are predetermined that you have to go and build. And so you have a whole bunch of people that are getting together and training throughout the year in these different formations and as these different teams.
And like any sport, any multi-individual sport, any team sport, the more you practice together, the smoother it gets.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And then so you have FS and all those different subcategories of competition, and then you have VFS, which is vertical formation skydiving, where you're falling feet first or head first, which means you're falling at a significantly faster rate as well, because there's less of you exposed to the wind for less drag. So instead of falling at about 120 to 130 like you would on your belly, you're falling at about 150 or 160. So you're going significantly faster. And so in VFS, you have four-way VFS, which is a very competitive group. You've got a couple of guys, like you've got a couple of teams that it's interesting where they kind of have been, you'll have one team that comes in and just dominates for a couple of years, and then other teams will come in and start to figure out how to engineer the blocks and the formations better and to fly more efficiently, and then there'll be like this couple of years of really good competition between like two or three teams, and it's really neat to watch because the level of skill that ends up coming out of it is insane.
That's tight.
It's very much so with formation skydiving as well, especially in the upper levels of competition in like open class and stuff like that, with where airspeed competes at the world level. Those are really neat jumps to watch as well. And then so on top of VFS you have MFS, which is mixed formation skydiving, where that incorporates belly, back, sit, and head down. So it's like you have the camera guy for that has to be, and it's two ways. So you have two people flying and then one guy filming it. So it's three people together. And the camera guy for that has his flying skills have to be so good because the fall rate changes when you're going from vertical to belly to back and then getting these different grips. Each time you change, it's going to be a different fall rate. So you've got the camera guy that has to stay with the group and then still maintain them in frame and be pointing the camera in the right direction and be in the right location to get the shot so that you can count the point. Like, it's insane to watch.
Wow. Yeah, okay. Man, I am such a novice in the world of the skydiving. So.
Oh, well, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to have worked the last 14, 15, 16, this month, well, I guess this is going to come out in September, so this month will be my 4th year in packing for the Nationals of Skydiving.
Jeez.
So I've helped support this level of competition for 4 years now, and each year my level of knowledge and skill set has grown exponentially as well. So what I can bring to the table has gotten a lot better. So like, excuse me.
You're fine.
This year, last year, or the last 2 years, we had nationals in Eloy at Skydive Arizona. And then this year, it's going to be in Skydive Paris in Paris, California.
Cool.
In Southern Cali, just south of LA. And there I'm gonna be driving out there September 15th, and I'm gonna be flying, I'm gonna be hanging out, setting up a spot to pack parachutes. And the whole reason why I'm going out there is to support the teams that are going out there from Arizona.
Cool.
Because then, like, a pack job, if you're not packing it yourself, unless you know the person doing it, it's kind of, you're always gonna have it in the back of your head because it's a pack job. It's your parachute. It's kind of your lifeline. So you want to, like, it's, especially when you're competing, if you have somebody that you know that has already packed for you hundreds, if not thousands of times, and you've never had an issue, then that's the person that you're going to want to pack for you while you're competing, because that's one less thing you ever have to worry about.
Right.
You can drop your rig off with me, and then...
The biggest thing that you would have to worry about out of all the things you have to worry about.
Kind of, yeah, because if you don't have a rig to jump because you had a malfunction, or God forbid, you had a bad opening because something happened or whatever, and you had a hard opening, and then now your neck is super sore, or your back is sore, or something like that happened. Now you've got a whole bunch of other things that are on your mind. And a whole bunch of other stuff that you got to worry about. And then on top of that, now you're like, okay, so do I want to trust this packer again to pack for me because now my neck hurts? Yeah. I don't know really if I want to do that. And I'm competing. Do I, like, now that's one...
Right now.
Yeah. So I'm going out there to support everybody from Arizona that's going to go out there and compete. And I think it'll be a really good time. Hopefully. I heard a rumor that they're getting a jet that was out of commission for quite a while back up and running that is able to be skydived out of, like jumped out of.
Jeez.
So I'm going to bring my gear with me, and I might try and get on one of those. Yeah. I've gotten to jump out of a couple of pretty good airplanes or pretty cool airplanes, and this would definitely be one of the ones on my bucket list.
What's your favorite airplane you've jumped out of?
Actually, it's not an airplane, it's a helicopter. I was fortunate enough to jump out of Red Bull's helicopter, the one with the rigid rotors that has 2 turbines and does like backflips and barrel rolls and stuff.
You jumped out of that?
I got to jump out of it. Yeah, I got to go for a ride and jump out of it.
That's tight.
Yeah, so packing and going back to the whole like not being a shithead kind of thing, because I have a decent pack job and I've been fortunate enough to like kind of befriend a lot of really cool people. I've been able to go and work on a couple of really neat projects. So I got to work on like a Super Bowl commercial for I believe 2015 or 16.
Nice.
And then I got to work on another like the Nvidia Shield commercial.
That Super Bowl commercial, is that the one you showed me a video of?
The longest yard one. where we.
There was one where you built a platform with a couch and a TV.
No, so that was the Nvidia Shield one where we built like fake living rooms and dropped them out of a C-130.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah, that was
on YouTube?
a lot of fun. Yeah.
How can people look at that up?
So I believe if you look up the Nvidia Shield, IDIA, I think
Yeah.
it's the whatever
We can't spell it out there.
The-
You're gonna have to figure that one out on your own.
the computer company.
Yeah. Okay.
They made like this little gaming platform thing, and I got to work on the project for the commercial for it,
Very cool.
where we got to build some cool living rooms and drop them out of airplanes out in the desert. That was really neat.
Yeah, you showed me where they landed.
Yeah.
The living rooms, not you guys. So.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I got to fly on that I didn't get to jump out of it, but I got to go for a ride on that airplane, and that was a lot of fun because that's the biggest aircraft I've ever gotten to ride on that was not a personnel aircraft, where it was like a jet that was carrying a whole bunch of passengers.
Cool.
This was the first like cargo plane that I'd been in that was that big, and it was huge.
That's cool.
Like, you could park a couple of cars in the back of it and it still have room to like walk around and benches on either side. It was insane.
Nice.
Yeah, I happened to be in the right place at the right time and was like, man, I want to go for a ride on that. And and they were like, okay, go for a ride. Hop on. We're flying over to this airport. If you can get a ride from there, you can hop on.
What's more common to jump out of planes or helicopters?
Airplanes.
Jets or engine planes?
So you're gonna have turboprops mostly at bigger drop zones, and then the smaller drop zones that you'll have in like very small towns and like the rural areas operate with Cessnas. So they're gonna be like Cessna 182s, which hold like 3 people, and then there'll be like 3 or 4 people, and there'll be 206s, which hold 5 people.
I got a phobia of small planes, man.
I did too until I started flying them and then started jumping out of them. And I'll tell you what, unless now that I have a couple hundred jumps, I feel considerably safer getting out of those airplanes.
Here's why I don't like them. I had a job once for this company that what they would do a lot is they would just a second, man. Okay, Planet Earth, we're back. We had a little malfunction there, so as you can tell now, my voice is a little clearer. But yeah, we realized things weren't working out quite about halfway through that. Hopefully, you're still tuned in, and hopefully the audio wasn't all that unbearable. When I review it, I'll edit it and I'll check it out if I can. If I can make it work, I will. If not, we'll re-record it. But
All right.
So this is why I have a phobia of small planes. I worked for a company that was an airplane transportation company. And sometimes if they had like an old airplane that didn't work that someone was buying to like resell or fix up or part out,
They'd put it on a trailer and move it?
yeah,
Okay.
all over the Southwest.
Yeah.
You know, but a big part of what they did was crash recovery. So an airplane goes down and the coroners go in and take out the bodies, which they don't do that thorough. I mean, they do a good job, but they're not as thorough as you'd think, mainly because after they leave, the coyotes come in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and they go through the rubble. And so we would get flown out in a helicopter, dropped off. And that was the best part of the job, by the way. Flying in a helicopter is so rad. I love it.
They're weird.
No, they're awesome, man. You feel like you're flying, dude. It's the best. But we'd fly out in a helicopter, get dropped off, and then we'd probably have to climb over a couple like little hills to get into where the crash was. And you could just hear the coyotes just yipping away. You get in there and they drop what's called bean bags, which are basically just giant, tarps that you fill full of, you got big long gloves on because it's nasty stuff, but you fill those through, radio back in, chopper comes out in circles, picks it up, takes one away, you fill up another one until it's all gone. And so I've seen like a fair amount of body bits and stuff. Man, I've seen up close and personal what happens when those things go down. So it kind of took a lot of the coolness out of small planes for me.
Well, so much like with anything else, though, a lot of those accidents, it's a series of, there's a whole chain of bad choices.
Flying at night, flying in storms.
So if you were to
Yeah.
eliminate even a link in one of those chain of bad choices, you could very potentially eliminate the possibility of a fatality,
Yeah.
which is a lot of what skydiving is it's risk management. How can I do this in the safest way possible to guarantee that I can do it for as long as possible?
Okay.
So even though we are jumping out of planes, a bunch of crazy assholes, there is a certain element of calculation that is put into the risk.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess with anything that's either whether it's a hobby or a passion or a career that involves risk, you're I guess with anything you're constantly calculating and evaluating the risk. So that makes sense. I know with jiu-jitsu, it's every time you get on the mat with somebody, some people more than others, but there's always a risk.
Well, yeah.
of getting
Well,
injured.
with that, just like to kind of quote Joe Rogan, with any combat sports, it's a chess match with dire consequences.
Absolutely.
That's
Well-
really what it is.
Well, the thing is too is like you become buddies with the people you roll with,
Yeah.
and so even though you want to kick their ass in that moment, you have a long-term investment in these people because you're helping them get better, and they in turn help you get better.
Yeah.
And so you really really don't want to hurt them.
Yeah.
You know, and if you get close, there's a lot of sorry, bro. You know, and but when you're rolling around, man, when you're grappling,
Yeah.
it's just like sometimes like you'll land on someone's arm and their hand will be bent a certain way, and like you have to kind of soften your landing, and they'll move, you know, and then they're the ones feeling the pinch. But yeah, you're always calculating a risk.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so what's the best skydiving movie out there
I would.
other than Point Break with the the scene where they're all wearing the Richard Nixon masks and
I would be the worst person to ask that.
worst person
yeah,
ever?
Yeah.
what's
probably.
the best skydiving music to listen to?
I really like a lot of like chill step stuff. I like hippie sabotage and like blackmail and stuff
Okay.
like that. Like when I'm flying in the tunnel and in the wind tunnel, and I've got the ability to listen to music. That's usually what I've got playing in my headphones.
Yeah, you probably don't listen to them free falling.
No, because then, like, the thing about that is once you open up and you're under parachute, you're out with other people, so you want to be able to hear other canopies and stuff like
Gotcha.
that, and try and be as safe as possible and be as aware of your surroundings as possible.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not just working with people to the right and to the left of you. I guess
No.
there's people above them. Beneath you
Oh,
as
all
well.
over the place.
Yeah.
You got to worry about them 360.
Yeah.
Especially because, like, in Arizona and Eloy, we're trying to land in such a small area that it ends up getting kind of congested.
Yeah. How did Skydive Arizona end up in Eloy?
That's
Because it's been open for what, 30 years?
they opened the drop zone in Eloy, I believe, in 1996.
Okay, so not 30 years at all.
No,
Okay.
but 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
But there was nothing out there.
No.
I mean, there's
And that's
nothing-
why they put it out there.
Yeah.
It was because there was nothing out there. So,
Yeah.
and it might have been 94. I'm not sure that when
mid-
exactly it
mid-90s.
opened, but it was in the early to mid 90s.
Wow.
Yeah. And in that time since then, it's grown to be quite the place. It's a facility to go to if you want to train with some of the best and really develop your skills.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to get good in anything, you always want to train with the people who are the best.
Yeah.
So,
And that's not to say that there aren't really good people elsewhere. It's just that this is a place that tends to have a very high concentration of record holders and people that are very, very skilled in skydiving.
yeah, sorry, there's a mosquito flying around the studio here, and
But
yeah, I'm going to get it. So if I trail off, it's because I'm hunting. So,
yeah, so I don't know.
that's cool, man. What is your most memorable jump?
my most memorable jump. There's a couple of them that come to mind. One of the last ones I did was actually really, really neat. I was in Lost Prairie, Montana, which is like northwestern Montana, up in the hills. Like, I'm about 40 minutes from Kalispell,
Okay.
which is like kind of the bigger town in northwestern Montana. And I did a 4-plane formation jump where there were 4 planes all flying together at the same time, like in formation together.
Wow.
And there were 90 people that all jumped out together, and we did what's called the cross-country high pull. So there were 90 of us, and we all opened up at the same time and flew down this valley of just, there was trees on either side, and the valley was just miles and miles and miles long.
That's
and
crazy.
yeah, and so the way you orient those kinds of jumps is you do it by wing loading. So the guys that are really heavy under small parachutes get out first because they come down faster, and the guys that are under lighter and under bigger parachutes get out last. So I borrowed my friend's parachute, and which put me at like what, this is kind of using skydiving terminology, but I was at a 1-to-1 wing loading, which means for every one
This mosquito landed on Josh's forehead, and I gave him the cue, and he killed it for me.
for every 1 pound of me suspended, there is 1 square foot of nylon above my head.
Okay.
And so because of that, I was way in the back of the line to be getting out of the airplane. So once I opened up, I turned around and was flying down the valley, and I just saw like 89 other parachutes all in front of me. And it was just the most amazing thing because it was sunset. It was like one of the last jumps of the weekend.
Wow.
It was just really neat.
That's super cool.
And then the other one that comes to mind was that Red Bull helicopter that I got to jump out of. I actually was working with the Red Bull team. They brought,
Nice.
yeah. So the Red Bull Air Force actually brought me out to pack parachutes for them while they were doing some training for demos and stuff. And I just was in the right place at the right
that's
time.
No joke, Josh.
Don't
That's
know
really
how
awesome.
I managed
Yeah.
to pull that one off, honestly. But so I get there, and I'd worked with them for 2 days, and the first day that I was out there, I was talking to one of the photographers in passing, and I'm like, man, I wish I could go for a ride in that helicopter. Like, that thing is so badass. Like, just watching it fly around and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So apparently the guy that's in charge of it happened to be cruising by on a skateboard while I was saying it and heard me. And we were at dinner that night, and I was getting ready to leave, and he's like, hey, so you said you wanted to go for a ride in the chopper. Like, did you want to go for a ride, or did you want to jump out? And I was just like,
I have a choice.
anything. Yes. I would be happy to just sit in it, like, much less jump. And he's like, all right, well, I'll be flying in tomorrow morning. Just meet me on the runway tomorrow morning, and I'll take you for a ride, and then you can jump out. Nice. So I get there, and the next morning, and it was Kirby Chambliss, who is another Red Bull sponsored athlete, but he flies the aerobatic planes and does like the air races with the crazy little airplanes through the pylons and stuff.
Red Bull does some pretty cool stuff.
They do some really neat stuff. So I actually learned that they changed the whole frame of marketing. And there's actually an entire marketing class that's built around teaching how they changed it. Because they don't do commercials or anything like that anymore. It's not your typical marketing scheme that you would use to build clientele. So...
Yeah, I know they don't give discounts either to like their vendors.
Yeah, no, they don't...
Yeah,
they don't mess around, man.
Yeah, they're like, nope, I don't care how much you sell, you pay as much as everybody else.
Yep.
It's kind of well, but look what they do with that extra cash. Though.
Yeah, but it's still actually a privately owned business.
That's awesome. I mean, they've got guys jumping out of planes. They've got guys jumping into Earth's atmosphere from space.
So that gentleman, his name is actually Felix Baumgartner. While I was there, he happened to be the guy flying the helicopter that I got to jump out of.
Nice. So you've met that guy?
Yeah, he's actually a really nice guy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So then we were I worked with them that night and or that day, and then they invited me out to dinner that night, and we went and got sushi, and it ended up being just me and 6 of the guys that were there, and it was myself and like one of the guys that helped with one of the main photographers for Red Bull, and one of the guys that was in charge of the helicopter, and then Felix, his girlfriend, and Luke Akins, who's the gentleman that jumped with no parachute earlier this year, last year.
Jeez.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sitting there and it's those 5 and me, and I'm like, how am I the one that's sitting here? Like, this is weird. Like,
Yeah, the MC Logic has a line in one of his songs where he says, "It's crazy how one day your heroes can turn into your brethren."
yeah. And
Yeah.
it's neat because, like, when I first got into skydiving, I looked at the guys like Airspeed as just these phenoms of, like, people that I would never, ever get to know or meet.
Right.
Flash forward, like, 4 years, and now I'm like, oh, they're just a bunch of shitheads that happen to be really good at skydiving.
Yeah.
They're really nice guys. They're pretty cool, but
Just like anyone
they're
else,
they're just people.
Right.
And it's been neat to learn that too, because some of the most talented guys in skydiving are some of the most humble people you'll ever meet, and they're more than willing to give up any information. They always love like teaching and coaching because they've got the experience, and they love to share the knowledge, and there is no reason to have an ego, really.
Right.
And it's really nice.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Did you already go to Utah?
Yes.
Okay.
I was in Tooele.
Tooele.
Yeah.
Thule.
Yeah, Thule.
Did I tell you not to call it that?
No.
Oh, okay. You knew?
Yeah.
I've had for being such a small little podunk shithole, it's got a lot going on in it, man.
Yeah.
And so I've had people that are like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go to Thule, Utah." And I'm like, "Dude, don't
call it
Thule.
that.
The locals will know you're not from there. Call it Tooele. That's what it's named.
Yeah.
You know, Tooele. What did you do out in Tooele?
I worked at Skydive Utah, actually. Okay. Yeah, right at the airport that's on, like, I want to say the north end of town.
Yeah. The only airport.
The only airport.
Well, Provo has a small airport. I mean, they're small airports, but they're expensive to get flights into and out of. Salt Lake is the big one.
Yeah, Salt Lake's the big one, but this is Tooele. So
Tooele has an airport?
Yeah, so they've got a runway and everything. It's like a 1.5 mile runway. They've got a whole drop zone that's based out of there.
Wow.
Yeah, so I went out there. Turns out, actually, the Super Bowl commercial, I worked with one of the owners on. So when I got there, he was like, "Oh, familiar face. You're more than," like, I had already talked to him before I came out, but once they realized who I was, they didn't, like, put a name to a face until I got there, and they were like, "Oh, yeah, he's fine."
Yeah,
like,
this guy.
yeah.
That's cool.
So I was out there for about 5 days and worked and had a lot of fun. I fell in love with the place. Like, super cool atmosphere, great people there.
Utah
is a really
is
neat spot.
America's best kept secret.
It's a neat area.
Yeah.
I like it.
It gets a little cold in the winter, but it's as far as places with snow, it's not as bad as Minnesota. It's not as bad as Wyoming or Montana.
There in Denver, like, those are two pretty, like, if I was going to move somewhere that it snowed, Grants Pass, Tooele, and Denver are probably about the only 3 places I would ever move to.
Yeah, Utah doesn't even get as much snow as Denver.
Yeah.
Because it's on the edge of the mountains.
Yeah.
Of the Rockies.
Man, so, like, I was on my way to Skydive Chicago in 2014.
Okay.
I was in Denver and stayed at a friend's house, and I went in and, like, went to go get dinner and was in, like, shorts and a t-shirt, and it was April, right? So I go in, eat food, and I'm in there like an hour or so, hour and a half, and then I come out, and I'm like, what is this white shit all over the ground?
Yeah.
Like, what is this? And then I finally realized, like, oh my God, it's snowing, because I grew up here in Arizona, in Phoenix.
Dude,
like,
it'll snow in, like, May.
I can count on one hand how many times I've been in real snow.
Really?
So oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
I've never really, but I'm used to the desert. Like, that's where I've been my whole life.
Yeah,
so this is where I thrive.
I've lived in Idaho, I've lived in Utah, and I've lived in Oregon during the cold.
Okay.
I've lived in Chicago and Denver also, but not in the cold.
Yeah. I've
but,
never so in 2012 I drove commercial trucks around the country,
Yeah.
and that gave me the I was doing hazardous waste transportation, so that
Gotcha.
gave me the ability to kind of experience a lot of different places in the country,
Yeah.
and that was where I discovered Denver, Oregon.
Yeah.
That's probably about my area. Those are my kind of people,
Yeah.
and that's about as cold as I really wanted to ever get.
Yeah.
Cause I mean, growing up here, I've got friends that are from there, and I worked at Skydive Chicago for a summer season, and
Yeah.
the first day it got below freezing, I was like, all right, I'm out of here. See ya.
No,
I'm not hanging around
and
for
Chicago's beautiful in the summertime.
this. Yeah,
in the
it's
summer.
really in the summer.
Yeah.
The other 9 months of the year, it's
yeah.
kind of a shit show.
Yeah, it gets cold.
Yeah.
I've flown through it, and I got to go. It got so cold in Chicago when I was on this layover that my flight got canceled.
Yeah.
And,
Oh, yeah,
I had to stay in a hotel.
They can't even land the airplanes or take off or anything. It's crazy.
And even just going in that shuttle from the airport to the hotel,
Super sketchy, I bet.
so cold.
Yeah.
Super cold. No, the coldest I had a job in my early 20s where I would travel around the U.S. Installing music players in Safeway, Albertson, Kroger, those little, the music you're listening to.
Yeah.
And positives like Del Monte,
Yeah.
pineapple on sale. The company that I worked for would give the music and the equipment to the stores, and then they would charge the vendors for advertising time.
Oh, okay.
And so I'd go into these things, be like, where's your server room? I'd go to the server room, I'd attach a computer to it, run a line to the amp, hook up the hold music, take off. Usually it'd take about an hour and a half, sometimes on a real gnarly old store, I'm crawling through the attic and I'm running cable. Yeah. I've crawled all over grocery stores, man. I've crawled in... Yeah, up in the compressor rooms where they keep everything cold, and they have these giant compressors up there that are massive. There's 12 of them. For some reason, some grocery stores, that's where they want to keep the amplifier for their music. It doesn't make sense. Yeah,
Let's put it in the most inconvenient location
the weirdest
ever.
location ever. So sometimes you'd have to cross connect through the phone lines and stuff. But for example, Michigan. I flew into Michigan. I flew in 2 days early because I was going to be unloading computers all day. Didn't realize how big of a job it was, but there was I think there was 400 computers that we unloaded.
Oh man,
as a crew. Maybe it was only a day early. Yeah, I unloaded them for a day and got a quarter of the way through it. It was a lot because they'd come in on big pallets and you'd have to unload these boxes that had 4 each of them, and they were still in a box.
Yeah.
So we were unloading them into the boxes, and I'd fill up my rented car, which is a coupe, or not a coupe, it'd be a 4-door.
Yeah.
And then I'd drive them to the hotel room. We'd rent a hotel room just to put computers in.
Oh man.
And then each one of the techs would have our own hotel room.
Yeah.
And so we'd start stacking these boxes in one corner and go all the way to the ceiling and go next, and we would fill up an entire hotel room. You open the door and it looks like a storage unit, just full of boxes,
Oh man.
And just stack them around the bed, stack them on the bed, stack them on the dresser.
Yeah. Anywhere you can.
Oh yeah, man, it was hilarious. And so, and we do it in California. Sometimes you'd have your hotel room at that hotel, and then you'd fill up your car, and you'd be gone for 4 or 5 days. And so you'd have a hotel room here.
And then a hotel room somewhere else.
Well, you'd have 2 or 3 hotel rooms sometimes because you'd have to go somewhere else just to get this last store that's on your route that's way out in the middle of nowhere. But they've got a Kroger there or an Albertsons, and it needs to have music. So you'd go there, and it'd be 11:30 at night, and you've been up since 5, and you're like, I'm not driving 4 hours. This is the second all-nighter I've pulled this week.
I'm not going into
I'm
the
not
middle
doing
of
it. I'm
nowhere.
getting a hotel room. Sorry, guys. You can,
Yeah.
So sometimes you'd have 2 or 3 hotel rooms, but in Michigan, man, I did every Kroger from Traverse City all the way in the north, all the way down to Kalamazoo.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Damn.
And the coldest I've ever been was in Traverse City because it's right on the water.
Yeah.
And I got out. It was -15, and I was like, I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna run in there, check in, come out, get my bag, and then go back
No.
in. I got out. I took like 4 or 5 steps. I was like,
Yeah.
got back in my car, turned on the heat, blasted it, sat there for maybe 10, 15 minutes, warmed up, put on my jacket, got all my stuff. When I got out, got all my stuff, ran in, still freezing, was not going back out. I didn't
You're
even want to
like,
go back out there
"Fuck
the next
that."
morning.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, when I was sitting, this was 2003 maybe. It was
Okay.
before Obama was president. All right. And I was sitting in this Hampton Inn in Traverse City, and I looked down. I'm having my continental breakfast, and I look down, and there's a picture of some local magazine. There's some local magazine, some Detroit, or I'm sorry, some Michigan magazine, and Barack Obama is on the cover because he had just been made. I don't know, what was he in? Was he as a House of Representatives or something? He was
I don't know.
something in Michigan. I don't know. I'm not that political.
I know he was a Chicago politician
Was
for
it
a long
Chicago
time.
then? Maybe
yeah.
maybe I was in Illinois then. They're right next to each other,
Yeah.
but I was right next to each other. And anyway, whatever this magazine was, he was on the cover wherever I was. I'm pretty sure I was in Michigan.
Yeah.
And I started reading through it. I was like, this guy's gonna be president. You know, he's just too smooth. Like, he's just too, like,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, sure enough, you know. So I'm not gonna say I called it, but I called it. So, but yeah, man, that was some serious cold. Can you jump in the cold?
Yeah. To a degree.
That wind chill's got to be fun.
Well, so not only do you have wind chill, but so once you get up to about 13,000 feet, it's on average about 40 degrees cooler up there than it is on the ground. So
Wow.
whatever it is on the ground, you've got about 40 degrees cooler. And the coldest I've ever jumped in was at altitude. As I was getting out of the airplane, it was a -10 or -15. And I made the mistake because it was a free skydive. So I was just told, hey, get on the airplane. On the ground, it was like 55. So
Yeah.
I was only wearing jeans and a sweatshirt. So I hopped on the airplane because I
Wow.
didn't have any other gear. So I just threw a helmet on.
I
and
immediately regret this.
as soon as they opened the door
You
to
knew you were
go
in
jump
trouble?
out, I was like, oh man, what did I do?
I made a bad
Oh,
mistake.
this is
on this
terrible.
one.
Yeah. So pretty much the whole jump, I was just like shivering and like, why did I do this?
Trying to go as fast as you can to
Yeah.
get it over with.
Oh yeah. It was pretty cool.
But I
it was a
imagine
neat
the
jump,
faster
but-
you go, the colder it gets, right?
Kinda, yeah. But I
Yeah.
mean, then you get to a certain point where like the drag on your clothes starts to beat really hard, and so you
Yeah.
like that kind of creates a burning
And
sensation
you're
on
cold anyway.
Yeah.
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 Chafes,
So-
chafes your nipples there a little bit.
Oh, a little bit.
Yeah. Ouch.
Oh, it's fun though. It's worth it.
in good weather, in pleasant weather, I'll try it.
Even in Arizona though, like in the wintertime, in the 20 years that the drop zone's been in operation, I think once or twice has it been too cold for us to jump.
Yeah, cold's not our thing out here.
Not really. Like I can put on a few layers and I'm fine.
Yeah.
And because generally I'm training to do 4-way video.
Okay.
So I want to jump and shoot video for competitions and stuff. And so I'm jumping in any opportunity I can. So as long as the
Right.
winds are decent, I don't care what temperature it is. I'll jump
Right.
if it's -10, I'll jump if it's 110. It doesn't matter to me. As long as I get to skydive, I'm a happy camper.
Yeah, we don't get too many -10 days out here.
Not on the ground.
Yeah, not
No.
on the ground at all.
No.
Arizona's not cold, man. Even our cold parts are like
Nothing.
Not that bad. I mean,
No.
the forests get a little cold. There's a good snowpack.
Yeah,
But-
like, and up in the Grand Canyon area, it
Yeah.
does get chilly. But even
But not
there,
compared
like,
to the Rockies, man. Like
No.
or yeah. Our skiing and our snowboarding out here, like we love it as locals, but like anybody that comes from like Utah or Colorado is like, really guys,
Oh,
this is cute.
God
you know?
forbid my buddy. So I've got a buddy that came from Alaska. He
Yeah.
grew up skiing in Anchorage and like the
Right.
back hills up there, and like
Well, he didn't like sunrise. What's his problem?
we haven't even bothered to take him out there because we're just like, you're just gonna laugh at
Yeah.
this whole thing
He
because
probably
it's
wouldn't
like
have fun.
it's just you're not even It's a joke for you. Like,
Yeah.
our hardest hill is probably going to be like your bunny slope.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I haven't snowboarded in 10 years. It's been a while.
yeah.
Yeah, I just don't. I'm too old to get back into it, I feel like.
I want to learn how. I've never been snowboarding or skiing.
Yeah.
Grew up on a skateboard and stuff like that.
Right.
But I want to learn how to ski so that I can speed fly and go like up on the top of the mountains and then fly down with a little parachute over my head, and because I want to be able to put the marks on like those cliff spots where it's like, how did somebody get their skis all the way up there, and what did they do
They
after
get dropped
that?
off
Like
at the
3.
top.
Well, not
Yeah.
but I mean like the carving piece where it's like
Right.
you've got the peak of a mountain and just the side of the peak is carved on, and then there's
Yeah,
like
okay.
a several 100-foot
Oh,
drop
okay,
on
I
the
see
other
what you're
side.
saying. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
tight.
You're like, how did he get up there for one, and how did he get down, and where did he go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine you've seen a lot more footage on that than
Oh
I
yeah.
have.
Well, I mean, I've fallen in love with it, and it's
Yeah.
been my life for the last 4 years.
What are some good videos that you can direct people to where they can check out some pretty intense footage?
Oh, geez, I don't. Off the top of my head, I can't really think of
What
a
are
lot of
some
stuff.
just buzzwords though?
Speed flying, speed riding, wingsuit base jumping is a very popular thing,
Yeah.
like proximity flying. But what I've fallen in love with is like paragliding and speed flying, because those are, you're not base jumping where you have a lot of, I mean, it's still pretty dangerous, but the safety nets that are implemented in paragliding and speed flying is a little bit better than, in my opinion, than in base jumping and stuff like that. Where in base jumping, you don't have like, you've only got one parachute. You're limited on time to be able to fix something if it goes wrong. The injury rate is considerably higher, and just there are a lot of factors into it. I wanted to do it for a long time, and then the more I've been around it and the more I've been exposed to it and stuff like that, I've stood on several base jumping exits and just never had a backpack on, backpack on, and I didn't really feel like jumping.
Yeah.
I don't have any desire to do that. Give me a paragliding wing or a speed flying wing, and I'll fucking run off the cliff in a heartbeat.
There you go.
No problem.
Yeah, that stuff for me is cool to watch, but like that's a spectator sport for me, man. You know, like it's like scuba diving. You know, I would love to be like, put me down in like a shark cage. Great. You know, I'm terrified of swimming in the open water in the ocean.
So I am too, actually, and that is a huge reason why I'm gonna get my scuba rating.
Yeah.
Because like I was really afraid of the sky for a long time until I started flying airplanes, and then I was afraid of like, oh my God, what happens if I fall out of one? So I started jumping out of them on purpose.
I got you.
No, it's not that
Don't,
scary.
don't you have a buddy that's scared of heights?
So yeah, actually, my best friend that talked me into doing my first tandem, he's terrified of heights, and made a skydive with me. And his first time on an
No, like
airplane
a guy
ever.
you work with though. Like
Oh yeah, we've got a couple of guys that are like can't climb up a ladder, but they've got hundreds or thousands of jumps.
That's crazy to me.
But well, the thing is when you're on a cliff or a building or something like that, or in a tree, you have a reference of how high up you are. You actually have a structure to tell you, oh my gosh, I am this high up.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're under canopy or in an airplane or in free fall, you don't have a reference to tell you how high up you are. So your brain actually doesn't have the ability to process, oh my gosh, I'm 1,500 feet off the ground, or I'm 5,000 feet up. It's just, hey, look, I'm floating.
I'm up high. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know. It still seems pretty crazy. Fun, but crazy.
I've found it to be simultaneously the most exhilarating feeling and peaceful feeling at the same time.
Huh.
Like, it's a blast, and because my mind's always going a million miles a minute. And so when I'm jumping, I have no choice but to be absolutely present in the very moment that I'm experiencing right now. I have no choice but to do that, because otherwise it can be detrimental. It can
yeah.
be costly. And not only that, but the activity I'm doing is so enjoyable and so amazing that it takes all of my focus. It's not hard for me to be
Yeah.
present in that moment, which is really nice. And so it's like my cup of coffee. If I can get my knees in the breeze and get out there like the first load of the morning, it's so nice because it makes my day go so much smoother.
There you go, man.
Yeah.
That's cool. Like a cup of coffee. Yeah, I imagine that adrenaline rush is probably equivalent to a good cup of coffee.
Oh, it's amazing.
For as many hours as coffee is effective.
Yeah.
Man. So what you said you're trying to get into competitive filming.
Yeah. Not only that, but I also want to become an instructor as well. I'd like to become a tandem instructor in the next couple of years, and AFFI, which is where I teach people to become skydivers themselves, and get some other ratings and stuff as well. And then I would, on top of that, I would really want to get into competition filming, filming for competitive skydiving, and eventually I would like to get on like a team like Airspeed or something like that.
Nice.
Where I am actually competing on a very high level. I miss it. I used to compete in a couple of different sports, and I really miss it.
Yeah, competing's fun, man. I'm going to be competing in October.
Nice.
In jiu-jitsu.
I haven't competed in a very long time.
Yeah.
And I kind of got the bug again, and I'm like, man, I want to do this.
Yeah, for me, man, it's at my gym with jiu-jitsu, you don't have to compete. There's guys that don't compete, but there's a big emphasis on competition. You're not looked down upon if you don't or anything like that, but everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's fun because there's some really high-level competitors at my gym. You know, first as a team they took first in the state of Arizona, adult and kids.
Nice.
You know, so the grommets they've got coming up are killers. You know, I mean, there's 15, 16-year-old kids that I roll with that if I'm not present, they'll catch me. And they're going to get me anyway.
Yeah.
But if I'm present,
you'll at least have a fighting chance for a couple of minutes.
Man. Oh, yeah. I mean, oh. Well, and it's just, man, they've been doing it for 2-3 years.
Yeah.
You know, and I've been doing it for 8 months. You know, not even a year.
Yeah.
So it'll be fun, man. I'm interested. We've got so many killers in my gym. We've got there's 3 or 4 high-level guys that are just monsters.
Yeah.
You know, nationally, world-ranked guys. You know, so when you're around that environment and people are going to competitions every month, you know, and you kind of start to feel the itch.
Oh yeah.
You know, and at first I was like, I'm just not ready. There's holes in my game. You know, like I've never competed in jiu-jitsu before, you know, and everyone's like, dude, you'll get owned in here. You're not going to get owned out there. Trust me. Like we got some murderers in here. I'm just like, yeah.
And I mean,
right.
And even if you do, it's a learning lesson.
Right.
You can look back on it and be like, okay, so where were my weak points? And I can focus on that.
Yeah, I'm definitely aware of where my weak points are in my own mind. So, I mean, you know.
But you never know.
Getting shown some new ones.
There could be something that you never even realized that was there.
Definitely some definitely some ones I haven't realized yet. But it'll be fun, man. Not quite as in shape right now in this moment as I'd like to be for it. Just because I'm coming off an injury. The stupidest injury ever. I got some ringworm on my hand.
Oh, man.
It's gone now, but like, it's so contagious, and it'll go around a gym like the plague.
Yeah.
You know, and these guys all have families. There's kids rolling around in the mats. So I didn't even know what it was. And so I just didn't go. I knew that I had blisters on my fingers, and I wasn't gonna like roll with blisters and get blister junk all over all my friends, you know, no matter what it was. And so I just didn't go, and it got gnarly. Like it looked like 3rd-degree burns on my fingers, man.
Oh,
like
shit.
Leprosy. And I sent a picture of it to one of my coaches. And he's like, yeah, dude, it's ringworm. Go get this. You'll be fine. He's like, but keep an eye on it because that stuff will flare up on you, and it's super contagious.
Yeah.
And clear. Been fine, been good. I'm lucky it didn't spread to like, because if you touch your eye or something like that,
Yeah, it can spread to other places.
So super lucky, man. Had to like wash my bed sheets every day, just to try to stay ahead of it.
Yeah.
But I'm finally to the point where I'm training again, and I've just made the commitment. I may not be ready for it, but if I don't commit to it sometime,
It'll never happen.
it'll never happen.
Yeah.
So
just like skydiving, making a tandem.
All right, you'll get me out of here. Okay, I'll make a commitment, but it's gonna be a soft, cushy commitment. You'll get me out there before the end of 2018.
18.
So I've got a year. All right, a year and a half, just under a year and a half.
All right.
That means I have to drive all the way out to Eloy.
Hey, if you come all the way out, I've got a room for you.
All right, man. I'll crash in your place and we'll get some jumps in.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Now, skydivearizona.com is the website?
I believe so.
Okay.
Actually, I'm not exactly sure, but I know if you Google Skydive Arizona, it should be the first one to come up.
Now, you were talking a little earlier before we sat down with one of my colleagues about the different packages, or I don't know what you call them exactly, but the different ways you skydive. And you can do the solo class, you can do the tandem class. What are the different ways? Like, what kind of time commitment am I looking at? If for like my first jump.
So for your first jump,
classes,
for your first jump, the class is not very long. You watch about a 15-minute video, because essentially if you're doing a tandem for your first jump, this is what's going to happen. You're going to go watch a video that's basically going to say, hey, you're doing a very extreme sport. If you die, neither you or anybody related to you can sue us. That's about it. And then you go through, your instructor talks to you. They kind of give you a heads up on how you're going to exit the plane, what's going to be expected of you, basic body position they want you to leave in, stuff like that. So you'll show up and check in. Then by the time you get into a harness, depending on how many people are there, the level of jumping we have going on, how many people are jumping in general, that kind of a thing, how many planes are turning or are on and people are jumping out of currently at that day, you'll have anywhere from an hour to 2 hours between check-in and then getting ready to jump. And then you'll get geared up about 15 minutes or so before you're supposed to go get on the airplane. Your instructor will go over some other things with you, and then you'll walk out to the loading area. And each drop zone is a little bit different. But here in Eloy, you'll go out to the loading area, get on a tram, and you'll go out to where the plane actually pulls up to let you come in. And then you'll spend about 17 minutes on the way up to altitude, hanging out, watching all the other crazy people that are going to jump out of the plane. And then eventually it'll be your turn once you get up to jump altitude. And you'll spend about 55 seconds in free fall, hit about 120 miles an hour. And then your instructor will deploy their parachute, and you'll spend about another 5 minutes under canopy, and then you'll land.
Sheesh.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
And then, so that, to do just a tandem, I believe is about $220. And then I highly suggest getting the video, which I believe is like $150 extra.
Right.
But it is so worth it.
Yeah.
Because then you've got a thumb drive of video and stills that you can go and show your friends and be like, look what I did. And you're not just telling somebody, you're like, I have a video of me jumping out of an airplane.
Well, it's cool too is they have someone filming you.
Yeah, and
so
there's
it's
somebody.
Not like you're not present in the moment.
No,
like with your smartphone, it's like no, you're doing it. You're there,
and you've got somebody right in your face. It's like, hey, give me a thumbs up, give me faces. Yeah, it's really really neat.
I can't remember what it was, man, but I saw a video of a guy skydiving, and he was just bawling.
Oh yeah, sometimes. So it's funny. We'll have couples come out where it's like this little tiny 100-pound nothing girl, and she'll go on a jump and be like, yeah, this is awesome. Like, I want to do this again. And then you'll have this like muscle-bound Hulk dude that is like super tough. And then as soon as he gets in the airplane and that door opens, he's like, oh, like it is amusing to watch
I'm
how
sure.
fast they turn into
I'm
like
sure.
no longer super big tough guys.
Yeah, I'm gonna go in there pretty humble.
And I've watched, and I've got friends that are girls that are tandem instructors, and they'll take these guys on jumps, and it is so funny to be like, to watch the girl be like, I thought you were a tough guy. What happened?
come on, man.
I thought this was no big deal. What's the matter?
Yeah.
Oh, it's awesome though.
Right on. So, now if you want to do a solo jump, if you want to be able to just throw
But then
a
if-
pack on and go anytime.
So the actual also the website is adventuresinskydiving.com.
Okay,
For the
cool.
one in Eloy.
Okay.
For where I've come up and spent most of my time in the industry and stuff like that, and done most of my jumps is in Eloy, and that's at adventuresinskydiving.com.
Cool.
That's where you can go and make any kind of appointment you want to be able to come out and do a tandem, or you can schedule your classes to be able to come out and do AFF and do a solo jump. I'm not sure on the exact prices of everything, just because I don't
Right.
work in the school. I work on the in like the experienced jumper side.
Yeah.
But I believe I do know that to do your first jump, you have to go through like an 8-hour course, which is 2 days worth of basically in classroom instructions, where you learn how to do a lot, like save your own life in case of an emergency in any instance, from the time you take off in the airplane to the time you land on the ground. And you go through a first jump course, so the instructors tell you what is expected of you. They teach you how to exit the plane properly, and then you'll go through, and the next day, once it's actually time for you to jump, you'll go and jump with 2 instructors, and they'll jump and they'll hang on to you the whole time. And if you forget to pull or you freak out or something, they'll be able to basically essentially hold you in the right position, and then you'll be able to deploy your parachute and you fly your own parachute down to the ground. Generally, you'll have like a walkie-talkie, so that once you're under parachute, you are essentially a remote control skydiver at that point, because then you have your instructor telling you, okay, turn right for me, turn left for me, and they help in assisting you fly a predictable pattern, much like you would in an aircraft, where you fly
Gotcha.
downwind base and final into your landing, and that's your landing pattern, and you fly it at certain altitudes. It's just like that in parachutes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of nuances that I wouldn't have thought about that.
Oh yeah, like it's crazy how far deep the rabbit hole really goes with skydiving, because you don't on the surface you think, oh, it's just people jumping out of airplanes, and then you don't realize that there's a billion-dollar industry in it.
A lot of math involved in each jump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so then, I mean, on top of that, I'm packing parachutes for people, and I've packed for up to like 12, 13, 14, 15 different people in a day.
Yeah.
And I'm keeping track of everybody's pack jobs, and then I got to keep track of, okay, so I did 7 for this person, 8 for that person, but that person was jumping a one canopy that cost $6 and another canopy that cost $7, so I got to
Yeah.
keep track of all this, and it's like, oh man, it gets crazy sometimes.
We're your elementary school teachers, right, Josh? Do you use math in your daily life?
Yes, I do. I do use math on every day.
They were right. Damn it.
I don't use, so my algebra teacher was wrong. I don't use that.
All
I don't use algebra a whole lot.
Chalk one up for
I'll
Josh.
use geometry and stuff like that all the time.
Basic math.
Basic
Yeah.
math? Oh yeah, all the time. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't use a ton of math. Although, when I was working at Pete's Fish and Chips, I loved it because I would have an opportunity to double check my math and stuff like that when someone would change an order. Because, I mean, how often do, like, unless you're actually doing something for work that involves math, how often do you just get to kick it and do basic math? Actually turn it into a fun little game. I was
Yeah.
Like, I forgot how good I was at addition and subtraction. Look at that.
Yeah, it's
I lost
actually
it.
working with those numbers over the last few years. Like when I go to restaurants, I can compute the change in my head so fast now that
Yeah.
it's surprising.
Yeah, that did make a difference there. Just the basic math facts.
Because it's
yeah.
like, oh yeah, here, I'm gonna give you this, and then before I'm even like it registers, or they ring it into the register, I'm like, oh yeah, I should be
Give me
getting this much
yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Or I'll mess with them, and I'll like wait till they ring it up, and then I'll pull out the exact change except like the coin change, and I'll give it to them, or I'll give them like, it'll be like 1536, and I'll give them 2035 or 2040 or something, and let them do the math, and I'll be like, oh yeah, it's this much.
There you go. So I think, is there any shout outs to anybody you want to give, or any sponsors or any links or anything like that?
So there's a clothing company that's been really awesome to me. They're called Era 3.
Nice.
They're in the middle of rebranding everything right now. So it'll be rebranded as ERA 3. The spelling was different before, but the new branding's going to be ERA the number 3, Era 3.
Era 3.
Yeah, they make soft goods. Like they're working on building like messenger bags and backpacks and stuff that have like level 3 body armor in them and stuff. And then they've got a lot of really cool hats and t-shirts, and go check them out on Facebook. They're really, really cool people, based out of Grants Pass, Oregon.
Nice.
Amazing people.
Very cool.
Yeah, and then Skydive Arizona, Sky Venture Arizona, that's the wind tunnel that's out there. I Fly Phoenix is also a really great spot. Those guys, the instructors out there, are phenomenal as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool, man. Well, dude, thank you for coming on here, man. We're going to have to do this again sometime.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, man. Again, Planet Earth, thank you for tuning in. Sorry about those technical difficulties earlier. Try to keep those to a minimum, but like I said, recently Kevin just dialed in the equipment, so still getting used to how the new interface looks, but I think I got it. I think we're good, and hopefully we won't have any more swafus like that in the future. But thank you for tuning in, and above all, be excellent to each other.